Welcome, everybody, to the June 8th Exceptional Learners Committee. We will start off at item number 101, Occupational Therapy Presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Sturdiron. Good afternoon, everyone. It's interesting to finally do this in person. It's going to take some muscle memory to figure out how to publicly do this without a little box in front of me. Anyway, as we've been doing all year long, we've been spotlighting the efforts of our related services personnel. We've been doing this monthly to help educate the board and the public as to how essential these personnel are to the overall health and well-being of our exceptional learners. So we left the best for last, maybe. 3 folks from the Occupational Therapy Division. We have Roxana Sager, who's one of our occupational therapists, Denise Kirk, who is one of our CODAs, and I can't tell if, is Christiane not here? She's there. Sorry, you're behind the podium. So Christiane Prine as well is one of our occupational therapists. So they're going to step you through kind of what their work looks like with related to our students.
Thanks. I'm going to start off by talking about what school-based occupational therapy is. Okay, so if you could just go to the next slide, please. Okay, perfect. School-based occupational therapy practitioners are occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants who use meaningful activities to help children and youth participate in what they need and or want to do in order to promote physical and mental health and well-being to meet the demands of their academic setting. So there are currently 8 therapists within our department, and this school year, we are in various schools within the district. Myself, Roxana Sager, I'm at Fostertown. Christiane Prine is at Horizons on the Hudson, as well as South Middle. Laura Kelly is at Gardnertown, Horizons, and Heritage. Kim Volpe is at Valesgate and Bishop Dunn. Denise Kirk is at Meadow Hill. Colleen Riley is at GAMS, New Windsor, Blooming Grove. Kate Lazaroff is at Temple Hill and Bonneville, and Emily Kelly is at Meadow Hill and NFA Maine. Christiane and myself traveled 2 buildings in and out of the district to complete initial and reevaluations outside of our daily caseload. So the New York State requirements for OTR and CODAs currently are an OTR currently. They used to have a bachelor's, but it now has moved to a master's or doctorate program. And once completing the program, we are to complete 6 months of clinical fieldwork experience and then pass a state licensure exam. CODAs are 2-year associate's degrees with 16 weeks of clinical fieldwork experience, and then as well they pass the state licensure exam. OTR and CODAs are mandated to complete continuing education to maintain our licensure. So we have to complete 36 hours over a 3-year period to maintain our licensure within New York State. The difference right now between a CODA and an OTR, the OTRs are the ones that complete the evaluations, and we complete the initial goal setting after completing the initial evaluation. CODAs can provide treatment, they can complete related service logs, they complete screenings, discharge notes, and complete goals on existing students.
And Ms. Sager, as we have brought to the board's attention, when you saw the configuration of personnel, we had 2 OTRs and 6 CODAs, but recognizing the absolute increased number of evaluations, it's why we asked the board to eliminate an occupational therapy assistant position and an OTR in the effort to make sure that we hit all the mandated evaluations that are required. So we'll talk about that more later, but you can see why that's so important.
Yes. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. Areas addressed in OT. Our interventions must help a child benefit from their educational program. So we work on skills that have an impact on learning. So we work on ADL skills like basic, like buttoning, zipping, shoelace tying. We work on, we provide students with support with assistive technology, and we work on read and write, as well as word prediction for children that might have challenges with handwriting. And we've explored handwriting enough, and we feel like it's not going to progress, so then we might move to more of an assistive tech approach. We provide environmental modifications within the classroom setting. We address executive function skills, seating and positioning within the classroom, sensory processing skills, visual motor skills, vocational skills, handwriting, gross motor skills, bilateral coordination, midline crossing, fine motor, visual perceptual, body awareness, and motor planning.
Can you just tell the board, because that's always interesting when you know little guys, what's midlife crossing? Because that's something that always comes up. And
Yes, so oftentimes, like, kids will be sitting at their desk, and let's say they're right-handed and something is on the left side of the table. They may shift their whole body to reach the left side versus crossing the center of their body to get it. And you really need to incorporate both sides of the body as you're progressing within the grade levels. So, we might use activities that are more left-hand sided and encourage them to cross midline instead of them turning their whole body as they're completing tasks. Okay, Newburgh OTs at a glance. OTRs currently have a caseload of about 25 to 30 students, whereas CODAs average a caseload of up to 50 students. We do individual and group sessions. We've been providing virtual therapy sessions for kids that are, on a virtual program. We complete screenings, assessments in and out of district, as well as our reevaluations. We are part of the Cpsc committee to partake in initial eligibility and annual review reevaluations. We participate in Cpsc to CSC meetings and provide input for classroom placement with the team. We push into the classroom for support. We provide sensory support. We do research-based interventions. We do ongoing consultation with the classroom teachers, ongoing collaboration with the speech pathologists, physical therapists, psychologists, social workers, administrators, and parents. We are part of the summer school program, the kindergarten screening process during the summer, and we also complete evaluations in and out of district during the summer months. We partake in the RTI process, and then the OTR provides clinical supervision of the CODAs, which is mandated by New York State. And outside of that, the OTRs, myself and Christy Ann, we are responsible for co-signing the occupational therapy assistance session notes on a monthly basis as mandated by New York State.
Hi, I'm Denise Kirk. I'm one of the COTAs with the district, and this year I'm primarily at Meadow Hill School. So as OTs in Newburgh School District, we focus on building students' skills for life and, excuse me, so they can reach their full potential and independence. So we work with students on things like handwriting, social emotional learning skills through things with groups and games, and core strength and posture, which helps build upon fine motor and gross motor skills. We work on their ADL skills like tying their shoes, buttoning, zipping, things like that, using utensils and other school tools like writing tools, their pencils, markers, hole punchers, things like that. We also work on sensory processing skills like self-regulation, self-calming, focus, and attentional skills. In regards to the referral process, an initial referral usually comes from the RTI team within each school building, or it comes from the CSE team from the special ed department. With that referral, a screening occurs within the school building from either the CODA or the OTR in the building. And as a result of the screening, we determine whether a full evaluation will occur, at which point, with consent, the full evaluation would determine whether or not services would occur at a team meeting. If a full evaluation is not warranted as a result of that, sometimes we would determine whether or not we're going to provide in classroom strategies like sensory supports, or maybe some fidgets to help with focus, or maybe adaptive paper or a pencil grip, something like that, some strategies to help support the student within the classroom, which would really just be like RTI supports. So how do students qualify for OT services? Students with special needs are determined through the IEP process, and students are formally evaluated to determine areas of concern that are impacting their ability to access the general education curriculum. OT is a related service and is generally paired with other special education services, and they are determined by the CSC, like speech, physical therapy, or a special education classroom. It's rarely given, if ever, as a related service by itself. So some signs that a student may need OT services would be things like poor fine motor skills, having difficulty holding their pencil or other school tools, or trouble manipulating things like that. Poor handwriting would be another indicator. Attentional difficulties, trouble sitting in their chair properly. The student may appear clumsy, bumping into things. They may be hypersensitive to sensory stimuli or hyposensitive to sensory stimuli. They may have poor coordination with tools, or just difficulty coordinating their movements in the classroom. You may notice their muscle tone is low or high. So those are just a few areas of concern that the teacher may notice, or somebody else in the school may notice, that may indicate a need for OT services within the school setting. As far as screening and standardized testing that OTs use, a screening may consist of a classroom observation, analysis of classroom work samples, like a notebook that the child has been using in class, administration of a formal or informal screening tool, and a screening is used to determine if a full OT evaluation is warranted. Screening results may also be used to guide classroom strategies that will be implemented within the classroom, and examples of this, as mentioned before, might be a handwriting workbook, to be used at home or in the classroom to assist the child in following through with classroom routines. And an occupational therapy evaluation is completed by an occupational therapist who will use the standardized and non-standardized assessments and clinical observations to help determine eligibility. Test instruments are selected to assess each area of concern. So fine motor skills, which is an area that OTs address in the school setting, are small movements made with fingers, like holding a small object or picking up a spoon, things like that. And if a child is struggling with fine motor skills, they're going to have difficulty with things in school, like holding a pencil correctly, opening up a binder, zipping up their coat, and manipulating scissors, all those kinds of things that they are doing in the classroom. So it's really hard to make progress in the classroom when they're struggling with fine motor skills. And handwriting is another area that we look at in the classroom as OTs. And handwriting performance is broken up into two equally important aspects. The product is the written outcome, and that looks at whether the letters are neat, legible, and written on the line. And that's really important when a child is writing an essay and it's going to be graded. And if the grader cannot read the student's handwriting, how are they going to score on a ELA test? And also the performance is another area that we look at as OTs, and that is how are they holding the pencil? How fast is the task performed? And is there any pain in the student's hand when they're writing? Both of these are crucial aspects of handwriting, and they are dependent upon several several underlying factors.
Denise, Mrs. Kerr, can we go back? Because two things. We wanted to show the video of the young man. We did get
Yeah.
permission to have him be shown. We always like to show our kids if we can, kind of what it looks like in
Here
a
we
therapy
have a
session.
video of a student working on some fine motor skills, and this is a student from Temple Hill School, and one of our COTAs, Catherine Lazaroff, is working on a cutting task, and so this is a fine motor task and also bilateral hand usage.
Good job. Go slow with that turn.
Is there sound on it?
Joshua has been working on his cutting all year long, and at the beginning of the year, he needed a lot more hand-over-hand assistance to do this activity, but he's become a lot more independent and pretty much only needing some verbal cues.
Thank you. When Ms. Kirk talks about handwriting, I'm going to date us, Ms. Maneo, but you know the days where we actually worked on handwriting and we used programs like the Palmer system and things like that, but I'm not even sure if we use that with any degree of consistency. Handwriting Without Tears is a program specifically designed and by occupational therapists and has proven to be really effective. And it's really important that we, in our kindergarten classrooms especially, we do promote that. Our occupational therapists and OTAs do a lot of work around that. So.
Okay. So sensory processing is making sense of information that you receive through your senses. So vision, taste, smell, touch. Kids that are oversensitive, they don't like the fire alarms. All kids don't like fire alarms. It's one thing to just hold your ears. It's another to run. So, we're looking at those severe situations. So they're overstimulated by, tastes or, they need, they don't like soft things. They like crunchy things. They're looking for more input. Under responsive, they don't feel anything. Like they don't feel pain. They're very, they're often clumsy. They like jumping off things. They tend to look dangerous. So we consult more on a consultant basis in those instances, unless the children have a diagnosis of autism, and then we're really in and interacting with the teacher and how their day goes. So some different tools that we might use. We have, headphones if, they're very sensitive, like the cafeteria. Pressure vests, we have weighted vests. Those we have to ask for permission to make sure the parent is okay with us using that. Chewy toys went out the window with the pandemic, so we don't use that too much anymore. Cushions, seat cushions and stuff like that. So the next slide is a young girl using the sensory path, which thank you to the people that allowed the district to get the sensory paths. We have them in several buildings. I would say Meadow Hills is the longest, so this is pretty long. I'm at Horizons, and we split it between 2 floors, and so it's a little shorter, but. Nope. Oh, if you want, we got all kinds of, I brought all kinds of props. So, yeah, I mean, if you can't do it, it's fine. It's just a little girl going through. Okay, all right. So, for those kids who are, who have difficulty, we'll use like a first then board. Kids that are working on, how does your engine run? So like the kids will go and there might be a sensory corner, and then they'll go in, I'm moving too fast, I'm moving too slow, and then we have activities. Like this one might, after she does it, she'll, feel more calmer, and then other teachers use it. But yeah. And this one's really nice because it's right next to the therapy room. Mine's right next to the therapy room. So sometimes when the kids are in crisis, the teacher or the teaching assistant will take them out and, have them go through it. Ours a couple times. This one, I think they would only make it through once and probably be okay. Oop, nope, go the other way. Yep. I think the teachers are using this more after the pandemic. The kids, I think, just really needed to get out and move. Yeah.
You can decide what to talk outside as well and create your own, if you have a small space.
I know, that's what I'm saying. She's done after that. Ta-da! She's like, whoo, I'm done. Okay, so we're on visual processing. We address visual processing. So that's how your brain interprets information. So some issues might be like figure ground, visual discrimination, visual memory, paper to pencil, drawing, visual motor, visual closure, visual spatial. So in the students, what we might see is spacing and size of letter, difficulty recognizing letter, copying shapes and letters, tracking, crossing midline, left, right, difficulties. So those are some of the things. And then love the Promethean board. We often use the Promethean board for those type of activities, hidden picture, visual memory games, mazes, and stuff like that. So it's great.
As we talked about, it's not visual acuity. It's very different, right?
Yes, visual acuity is more about like what your muscles are doing to see. So this is about the brain processing the information, the visual information. So motor planning is the ability to plan and carry out unfamiliar activities in the correct sequence from beginning to end. So some difficulties that you'll see is that they're clumsy, they're sloppy eaters, difficulty initiating tasks, using manipulatives, sequencing steps, being organized, and tying their shoe. Some people know it as a diagnosis of dyspraxia. Next. So handwriting, so some of the things that we do for interventions are the handwriting book. It's very sensory. We have all different type of modalities that we do, and then they write. So they form it with putty, they make it with sticks, they do it on a dry erase board or a chalkboard, and then we write. So they're doing many things to get to that point. It's funny, I had done pre-K testing, and you test a kid and you give them scissors and they've never used it. So yes, they're not going to be able to use scissors, but there's things that you do as children that enable you to learn how to cut. So it's those type of things so we give them pencil grips for handwriting. We use visual cues. We got adaptive scissors, TheraPutty to strengthen their hands for their cutting, lacing, pegboards, sensory, to address sensory. We have the therapy swing in some buildings. We do Velcro under the desk so they can feel it. We use the pressure vest, the compression vest. And then also we do bouncy bands. We put them in the chair and then the kids can just bounce their feet on it and they're less distracting. Or we'll give them a fidget or something, that's not too loud that they can, use to be calm while they're also getting the lesson. Vision, again, the Promethean board is key in this. Even puzzles on the Promethean board, mazes, dot to dot, hidden pictures, tracking activities. So next one. So we collaborate and consult in the classroom. We consult with the parents as well, give them strategies for home. Classroom push-ins, we're teaching the whole class, we're getting an activity. We're kind of focusing on our kids, but we're also like shoe tying. We're going to teach a lesson to the whole class so everybody benefits. And then when it's a pull-out service, it's either small group or individual to address the IEP goals in a purposeful manner. We do not take out during reading block, math block, special or lunch. So the next one is like a push-in. So we'd push in, and the best part about that is that we're addressing the goals, but there's no loss of instruction. There's an increased functional application to the goals, and we generalize this skill in a natural setting. There's peer modeling. We can communicate with the support of the teachers. A lot of our girls have gone and done, Laura Kelly and Kim developed a whole fine motor program that they've used in their schools. Laura Kelly did this in one of the kindergarten classes. It was awesome. I got to go do it with her. So they'll do like handwriting. Emily Kelly and Denise have done handwriting, fine motor, sensory. Colleen, she does yoga, handwriting. So the next one's Colleen. So Colleen has worked for the Newburgh and Large City School District for 30 years and 4 months. She is retiring this year. And she has been a value member of our department and an integral part of the team. She will be greatly missed, and the person taking her place has to fill big shoes. So we wish her the very best, and she will be greatly missed by the students and the staff of Newburgh School District. So did you want to? I can do the numbers. It just, I don't know, you can see the difference between, the increase, it's astronomical, 448, 78 consults. If you look at that is related to COVID, because we hadn't seen the kids, so we weren't going to turn around and just say, all right, we're going to dismiss you. We couldn't. So we put them down to consults to make sure. The teachers were like, yeah, they're doing what they need to do, but, we needed to see it, because on screen is different than in person. So I think that's why that jump in consults. But I also think that 448 in the last 2 years is just an influx of people coming to the area, whether the city or other countries. The amount of evaluations that I've done of children outside this country I was surprised this year. And great needs. There's a lot more OT needs than I do believe in the past. And that's not to say that we're not trying to get in the classrooms and provide that, but I feel like the kids coming in just have greater needs than we're able to supply. So then the next slide is initial evaluations. So that reevaluation number is way out of control. It's just, I had 81 and I can't. It's just.
And Ms. Sager texts me every week to remind me that it's been somewhat challenging this year. So we are using part of the summer to complete those reevaluations. It's just been physically and logistically impossible to get them done during the school year. We are still trying to catch up from what happened during the pandemic. We have 222 kids. I always mention those kids. Roxana and teams of our related services have gone out in the past to some of our OU BOCES or our day and residential programs, just because it's good that we see our kids, we can see how they're doing, could they come back. So they offer us another set of eyes to kind of the functionality and the progress kids are making. That has been logistically almost impossible. And really next year, we're probably going to have them not do that as much because they just can't get around. The reason being that somewhere along the line, BOCES especially used to just build that into their tuition. They would just do the evaluations for us. Now they charge us. And for example, I think, Roxana, it's $1,600 for a single OT eval. So it's really frustrating for things that used to be built into the program. Now we're getting a la carte on. Day and residential doesn't do that to us as much, but it's just something that we're watching.
Currently right now, we have 37 out-of-district evaluations to complete that we just have not had time to get to at all this year.
Can I just make a couple more comments, if that's okay? And then we'll move on. Just when we're talking all year about this notion of behavior and what's occurring in our schools and how our kids came back from the pandemic with greater challenges, I just want to give credit to the occupational therapists, because I don't think they've been ever mentioned in any of our forums as how they do have a role in that. That sometimes what we're seeing look like a behavior, but really are a functionality of some kind of developmental delay around sensory or fine motor or motor planning. Kids that are dysregulated and who have poor motor planning are going to bang into kids. They're going to walk down the hallway and not necessarily do what they need to do. And these guys spend a lot of time trying to support kids, especially at the elementary level, to really help come up with strategies for that. One of the things that we moved to as a district when I got here is something called the 3-to-1 model, so in case you ever get questions on that. Traditionally, when we write an IEP, we write that's twice a week, once a week, which means that you're getting 40 sessions a year. What we began to realize is that, yeah, but then they do an evaluation on a kid, or they have a Cpsc meeting, or they have an RTI meeting. And when I started to look at the actual sessions that kids were getting relative to the IEP recommendation, they were getting nowhere near 40. So the state of Oregon came up with this concept that's really, really good, and I think all of our related services folks like it, where they do 3 weeks of direct service, and then they use that 4th week to do the evaluations, to attend CSE meetings, to go in and do the consults. You can see the many hats they wear and how important it is to go in the classroom and see whether these skills are generalizing and how they can help support the teachers. So I know you guys like the model for good things about it, and it's honest to parents. We do, 30, I think, is the, if you're once a week, it's 30 sessions a year, 23, I forget, because we're in a 6-day cycle. But there's so much that goes with that. It's not just the individual service, it's all the consultation, follow-up, and assurance that the kid is making progress that goes with that.
Do we have any questions or comments? Mr. Levinson?
Thank you, Mr. Strudine. So firstly, thank you for explaining the job, the important job that this has done for our students. I appreciate that. I have just two comments or questions. When the first slide that had what buildings had occupational therapists in it, I didn't think all the buildings were listed. Was I incorrect?
We currently don't have any students at North, so, if we did have a student there, then we would assign somebody there. But I think primarily every other building is pretty much.
All the other
accounted for.
buildings have someone in?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So, all right, so that's the reason that there's no one there that needs this service, you're
Right.
saying?
Right.
Okay, so then the other question is, does the need for OT services diminish over time? I know that you have a lot of students, we have a lot more students that need interventions and stuff, but over time, does their need go down and they may, I'm going to say, it's not the right term, but graduate out of an occupational therapy
Yes.
services?
So generally, generally, I would say before they get to middle school, we try to dismiss the student, but if there's still a lot of needs, then obviously we would continue. But I just find that there's a lot of children right now that I personally think a lot of kids are just on, playing video games. They're not engaging in other activities anymore, your basic coloring, cutting skills, and then they're coming in and just so they just have weak hand strength and aren't doing anything, so that has been a big issue. And that's something that I oftentimes tell my students. I'm like, put the video game away for a little while and engage in something else, So, and that's feedback too that I give to the parents. You're welcome.
I just want to make a comment. As a parent of a special needs child, to have an OT over all these years, I've learned so much. And I was amazed at everything that is included in OT. Is from the time my son gets up to the time he goes to bed, it's OT. It doesn't end. And my wife and my 2 older sons, we get involved in OT every day.
Well, thank you
and
for that.
PT. And
Yeah.
so it's you do it with science and you do it with love, and I really appreciate it.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I don't have my,
Number 2 is restorative justice.
yeah, because so Mr. Regan is going to come up. We have 2 quick ones. He does have, we're juggling interviews today in between, so he has till about 4:34 before he gets to the next interview, correct? So.
All right, good afternoon. It's good to see you all in person. This is new, which I like. So just I want to give you a quick update because we've done a lot of talk around restorative practices and some of the initiatives we have in place and the trainings we've offered. Most recently, the board approved the Restorative Practice Planning Committee, so I really want to share with you the work that they've been doing. Previously, over the last summer, we did a train-the-trainer session where we had about 40 staff who were trained as trainers to implement and turnkey that training over to the larger staff population. So at the opening day of school, we were able to do that and make sure that and I'm speaking to our secondary schools, that they had the training that they needed to understand the basic principles behind restorative practices. Throughout the year, each building has kind of varied in their degree and their ability to implement just based on a number of things that have come up throughout the year. I can say that in every building there are teachers that have been using restorative circles in the classroom to build and cultivate relationships. So in previous committee meetings, I've shared just the multiple tiers of restorative practices. So you have your tier 1, where we're just focused on building relationships, because you really can't repair what's never been built in the first place. So the community building circles are around building relationships among students and adults. And it did come indicated as a need on the survey that we do twice a year for students, that sense of belonging was really low. So we wanted to focus on that. But what we found was that plans don't always go according to the way we plan them. So we needed more time to really have the building team sit down and take a look at the plans they built over the previous summer, see where they were in implementation, and look at any barriers that might have come up as a result of, that might have hindered them from implementing the plan fully as intended. And they've been meeting since March to kind of review their action plans and start to do strategic planning in next year and over this summer. What do we need to do to further advance the community building circle initiative that we have? Typically, in the Train the Trainer session that we offer here in the district, they look at restorative practices as a 3 to 5 year implementation plan. I would say this has been year 1, which is just around building a common understanding and a common language around what is community building, what is respect, responsibility, and relationships mean. How do we give students a voice in identifying their values and their norms that they want to bring into the classroom and the school community? Next year, we want to get into year 2 of implementation, which is actually putting it into practice and giving students and teachers the resources and the training they need to do that, and have those spaces during class time and outside of class time to continue to build relationships. Simultaneously, we have offered trainings for PPS staff and administrators to conduct the mediation circles, and we'll continue to offer that. Next year, we do have, on opening day, we have a training set up, that we'd like to propose, where they will learn, the PPS staff, our counselors, social workers, psychologists, our assistant principals, they'll learn further advanced skills in how to conduct a mediation using a circle. When you do that, you're talking about what happened in this conflict, who was affected, who was impacted, also what was my part as each person, what role did I play in this conflict, and the most important step in that process is, now what can we do to repair the harm, and what can we do to move forward? The third tier of that, which we're not really at that stage yet, although we've been exploring potential, which I'll share about in the next agenda item, which is the Diversion Program, which is once serious harm has been caused, how do we repair that harm? And how do we create alternatives or opportunities in addition to a consequence? How can we also create an opportunity to learn from that mistake? So each building are almost complete with their action plans for next year. On the 21st of June, we'll be offering a refresher training for all those people who were trained last summer in restorative practices. They'll get a refresher, and each of those school building teams will have an opportunity to collaborate with one another and share ideas around what's been going well in their schools, what are some of the challenges, and what are some good ideas that they want to share with each other. Then over the summer, we're going to do another round of Train the Trainer to further build our capacity. So we're going to be looking for more staff, and this is something that we'll be bringing to you soon to request your approval in a further training over the summer for the Train the Trainer. And what we want to do is increase the number of staff who are equipped to build the capacity of their colleagues to use community building circles. And then additionally, like I said, on opening day, we're going to be doing the Tier 2 and the Tier 3 restorative training. So before I move on to diversion, do you want me to speak to diversion? Okay.
Do we have any questions on restorative practice? Ms. Mineo?
Just a quick question. Are there buildings that are ahead of other buildings, or it's been in practice longer, that we could look for data there before the others?
Yes, I could say South Middle School is much further along than all of our other secondary school buildings. And when we look at the discipline numbers, the last time I checked, they were close to half that. The discipline referrals were close to half that of the other secondary schools. As a result of all of their efforts in building relationships, building community, conducting mediations, using restorative practices, I believe that plays a significant role in the reduction of those incidents.
I have a question about evaluation of the program. Do you do a mid-year evaluation? What are you using, tools, and will the board be able to get some of that data to look at?
So next year, we can certainly continue to take a look at our discipline referrals. That's the primary factor that we can use to measure, is this increase in community building resulting in a decrease in behaviors? There's also implementation fidelity checks that we can build into the model between all of the buildings. And we said we were going to implement circles in these said classes. Have we been able to do that? And what do teachers need? If not, what do they need to continue implementing that?
So, Mr. Baer, the board really needs to have a report on a evaluative report.
Sure. And then one of the other things that we are keeping track of, and South has led the way with this, is we are keeping track of the actual circles, the number of circles that are conducted on a daily basis, and we're translating that. So we can certainly provide to the board how many circles are done on a weekly or monthly basis, and probably better to give to the board like quarterly, because we're now keeping very close track of that, both on the community circle side as well as the mediation restorative piece.
Diversion?
So for the diversion, that's more related to the Tier 3 restorative practices that I was referring to. Tomorrow, actually, we're going to be taking a tour of Schenectady City School District because I believe they're in year 3 or 4 of implementing a diversion program. And what that is students who have been in some type of, or have received a suspension, whether it be for a violent incident, a drug-related incident, insubordination, they're offered this opportunity they're still removed from school for a period of time. However, they're placed in an alternative setting where there's an intensive therapeutic component, and it begins with an assessment of the student needs. They use a screening called YASI, which is really just like a comprehensive, holistic questionnaire that asks them, in various domains of their personal life, their school life, their academics, their social needs. It assesses where they are and where they're struggling, and then based on that assessment, they have a clinician that works with the kid to provide. They use a number of evidence-based interventions. They use anger management. They provide substance abuse counseling, mental health counseling. So it's something that we want to explore further and see if we could potentially adapt a similar type of model for Newburgh, for students who are struggling with underlying issues. The concept is if you address the underlying issues that's leading to the behavior, you'll see a reduction in that behavior.
Any questions or comments on that? I actually have a comment, or actually a question. Is that going to be implemented for September? Because I think the main concern in the schools is that if you have a violent incident with a student, that they're back in the school in a relatively short time, and there's nothing really that addresses the issues other than just time. So is that going to be part of September, beginning of school, this is what we're going to do? And is that going to be also part of Eagle Academy?
Of the Eagle Academy? Yeah, so it's something that we're planning towards, and I would say something that we would have to get back to as far as whether we're ready to implement it in September. But currently, we just adapted a modified version of that for students with substance use referrals, where we have clinicians who are appointed by the board to provide treatment, assessment, and referrals for those students who have substance-related referrals. So that's something that we're piloting just at the last month of school. And our hope would be to expand that for a number of other discipline incidents, but it's something we have to plan more thoroughly so that if we do it right.
Great. Thank you very much. Community Schools Initiative.
So it's a perfect segue. Dr. Pample is going to give us a brief because we're running out of time. just to update to the board, but what Mr. Regan is talking about actually may find its way into a community schools program that we're looking to submit as part of a grant. So.
Good afternoon. So on Tuesday, you're going to see a resolution requesting approval for 10 NTA members and 7 NASA members to travel to Binghamton City School District to observe their full services community schools grant funded program. And this is a model program that's been identified across the state. And this is in preparation for our application. We anticipate that it will be posted on the Federal Register in late summer. In January, there was a commentary period posted for legislatures, so we know this is coming. This isn't a new grant. It's an old one. I think it was first established in the 1980s, but it has its foundations in some of the grant funding we did in the 1800s when we had large waves of immigrants coming to this country and their children didn't have the resources to come to school ready or prepared to learn. So we put dental clinics in the school. We had free lunches for the first time in the schools. So it's an old grant, and it's a familiar grant to us. We had this probably in 2017. And the premise of the grant is that we have collaborative relationships with community-based organizations that can come in and provide supports to students and families beyond what teachers can do and beyond what principals can do. Some of the documentation associated with this grant is that teachers spend up to an hour of their day doing things that are not instructionally related, getting students available to instruction, and principals up to 3 hours. So when we saw this was going to be posted again, and there was an argument in the past that this grant, the community-based providers, were coming in and taking away unit work. So when we saw this was going to be posted again, we said, let's talk to the NTA union president and look at this with fresh eyes. And she's been very helpful. We assembled a very small committee of people to really look at what is it that we can't do for our kids in the school day to assist them and their families with things that interfere with their ability to attend regularly or be available to instruction. Dental health, vision, housing, mental health. And some excitement for the grant has really grown. And they are willing to partner in developing this grant. And so Mr. Bear and I posted for NTA members to travel with us to Binghamton, and we had an overwhelming response. I think we interviewed 28 people yesterday, and there were more trying to get in the action. So this is an exciting opportunity for the district. It's something we really need, and we feel like we can really position ourselves to be contenders. In the past, and this isn't a grant that's posted every year. When it is posted, it's generally only conferred to about 50 districts across the United States. This year, they're looking at 800 districts and awarding between $250,000 and $500,000 to districts that are awarded the grant. So we don't know what services we're going to pursue yet. We don't know what it's going to look like. The people that travel to Binghamton with us are going to work with us in some data analysis sessions, some strategic planning, and actually sitting down and writing some of the components of the grant with us. So we've talked to several other school districts, Rome, Messina. They actually have union-led full-service community schools grants. So I think we have a very strong partnership with the NTA. I think there's a lot of excitement building, and we're going to be doing some more activities like this in preparation for its posting.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
We're very excited. This has been a great collaboration with the NTA. We'll be able to, you'll see that Tuesday will include the trip as well as the hours over the summer to gather the folks.
Transition fair update.
So that will be Ms. Orwick.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having us in person. So in 2019, April of 2019, we hosted our first transition fair. Doris Lopez contacted vendors in the county, and at that time, we had about 35 families. And the goal was going forward that we would have that fair every year. And then COVID hit. So this year, we weren't able to have it until June. We had it on June 1st. We had 12 workshops held by 11 vendors. We had about 20 families attend, some of which were students that attended. The feedback from the families was extraordinarily positive, and they just felt like there wasn't enough time. The evening was over 3 hours. They just felt like they didn't have enough time to learn. We were a little disappointed in the turnout, and we met and discussed what could have been the barriers to that. June 1st, really difficult time, right after Memorial Day, a lot of stuff going on at the end of the year. That night, we had really bad storms, and we felt like, let's move it back to April. But also, we talked about ways to get families to have little sessions throughout the year. So our goal next year is to have an introduction session at the open house in September, and then at parent-teacher conferences in November. And then these would just be ongoing workshops and activities so that families could continue to make connections with these vendors. Some of the things that really need time are like the application process to the Office of Persons with Developmental Disabilities. That could be a multi-year process, and they've changed that process recently. If a family is seeking guardianship, that takes many, many years, both emotionally and then the whole process once we start it. So we're going to have smaller workshops next year, culminating in a large fair in April. And we did have a couple. We're really happy that we had a few families from out of district that actually came to the workshop as well. So I just wanted to give a little highlight and a little shout out to Doris Lopez, because she did this all, and it was just a beautiful event. And these are the vendors we really want to thank for their time and their expertise that evening.
Any comments? Mr. Levinson?
So just a quick clarification. This is generally for families or students that will end up graduating, correct? And then go into either the workforce or go to further education that they have. And this is to help them overcome those obstacles.
In
correct?
part, yes. But there's also families that are going to have their students graduate with a skills and commencement credential who won't go on to college, per se, a traditional college setting. So there's adult services that do presentations. We also met a new organization who have started a new transition program, and they're hoping to go into Mount St. Mary, where it can be for students in a NYSA track, or it could be for students that aren't ready for a full college experience. It's similar to the Bridges program at Orange County Community College. And I actually had a conversation with them about potentially could we start an early college high school program for our students with disabilities for things like that. So it's for a variety of people, but it's for students with disabilities, whether they have an IEP or a 504.
Can I mention that in the interest of time? Is that okay? We need to talk more about the Osborne Foundation. Are you aware of this? There's an organization in town. They presented at a community collaboration. They're offering full scholarships to our scholars. They start early. I'm not going to get into the detail because we're running late, but they start with kids early. They do goal setting. They do a lot of support around social and emotional well-being, habits of mind, helping them with tutoring, a whole range of things. And the idea is that if you stay with us, we will give you a full ride to the college of your choice. We need to talk more about this program. They're really trying to get in. The fact that they were there for our transition fair shows they're not just interested in just, the high performers, that they actually see our kids as being part of this. So
There are numerous Facebook groups also that parents go to try to find resources that just like your fair. So maybe next year you can sign up for all those and then advertise on those pages.
Yeah, I know that phone calls went out and there was advertising, and I'm not sure why more families weren't reached, so that's something we're going to continue to work on. I don't know that their mailings went out early enough or to a broad enough population.
Yeah, the Facebook pages, the parents share it with everybody, so be good So the next item is the resolution to approve tuition waiver for students.
Good for Mr. Gerard to give us a brief. The last two are very quick, so we're almost done.
So many years ago when we began, we started an 812 program at Meadow Hill for students with autism. This is the first graduating class. So when they came up to the high school in 2018, we created a program for them. And the goal of that program was to provide them with opportunities to receive a high school diploma, to keep all doors open, but to also offer them an opportunity for workplace learning. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we were not able to offer them that opportunity to enter into workplace learning while finishing their diploma. So we would like to propose that 3 students from NFA North and then 1 student from NFA Maine, who are all earning Regents diplomas this year, return to participate in workplace learning for 1 additional year.
Any comments? Mr. Levinson?
Of course, I think it's a great idea. So did those 3 families approach us, or did you send out to whoever possibly would be able to take advantage of this?
We've been working with these families since they entered the high school on this. This has always been the plan, that they participate in workplace learning. Unfortunately, it was because of COVID, it couldn't happen sooner. But we've been working with them since they started high school.
I believe that, I'll work with Mr. McCoy. I think we have to give the student ID numbers, or do we not, when we approve them next Tuesday? Okay.
Last item is the monthly update on CPSC, CSC.
So this is something very quickly. You can see how it's, not surprisingly, the CSE meetings have just skyrocketed. Just quickly, John and I are talking, that number has been traditionally in the 2000s, high 2000s. It's just showing the team that's sitting before you, they have literally been doing this, feels like day and night, and it's June, and we still have so many more to go. We've had so many delays, so many parents cancel, so just be aware that, the month of June, these guys are still working pretty much to the last day of school, trying to make sure we meet the mandates.
Thank you for all the work that you and your team have done, and it's been a challenging year, but next year is going to be better. Right? Thank you. Have a great summer, everybody.